In golf, they call this a mulligan. In video games, we call it Prince of Persia: The Two Thrones. And for fans of the nimble prince, this was like the refreshing gulp of water that washes down a bad burrito. It's still in your stomach, you still haven't forgotten about it, but hey, at least this one cleanses the palate. Released exactly 1 year after Warrior Within, which in this case serves as the bad burrito, The Two Thrones washed away the deliberate grit and grime applied so needlessly to the prince's prior adventure. In this game, he loses that superfluous tough guy act that made Warrior Within so characterless, and really that alone makes it an improved experience. Translation? Yeah, the generic riffs and toughness that almost ruined Warrior Within got the axe in Two Thrones, and fortunately the prince didn't stop there. It sounds cliched, but the design of the Two Thrones feels centered around the idea of learning from the mistakes of prior games, using what works, and either cutting or improving what didn't. Take a handful of sand from the Sands of Time and mix it with, well, a few grains from Warrior Within, and you've got The Two Thrones, a game that combines the best elements of the last two Prince of Persia games into a more polished and refined overall experience. The first thing you notice about The Two Thrones is that Ubisoft restored the Middle Eastern charm of the music and atmosphere. The soundtrack is defined by that dynamic and distinctly Persian vibe, a welcome throwback to the Sands of Time. But what's interesting is that it also feels a bit tense. After all, the prince has gone through a lot since the Sands of Time, and the music in this game reflects that. This game just has the sound you expect from the Prince of Persia, and from that base, it creates the appropriate moods, a sense of foreboding and even creepiness at times, and it really sets the tone for the game's story. Picking up where Warrior Within left off, the prince returns to Babylon to find his city in flames and his beloved empress in need of an old-fashioned rescue. You see, his experiences and tragedies have left the prince in emotional and personal conflict. He's sort of torn between good and evil, not too dissimilar from the devolution of Anakin Skywalker, in fact. Only it's up to you to prevent the prince from sharing Vader's fate. So obviously there's still a hard-edged feel to the prince, but this time it's done a lot better. Tearing the prince in two with a Jekyll and Hyde dynamic is a clever way of bringing the charm of the character together with the weight of his experiences. It feels a lot more genuine, and at least it's far less cheesy and irritating than the ceaselessly bleak prince of Warrior Within. Of course, what matters more than who the prince is what he can actually do, and the game makes a few welcome adjustments in that regard as well. The Two Thrones is essentially built from the same acrobatic platforming of the two Prince of Persia revivals before it. You control the character as he runs across walls, swings across rooftops, and generally tears through his environments like a trapeze artist with a sword. And as you'd expect from any person who has a sword, he does in fact use it. There's lots of standard third-person combat as well. But a common criticism of the Sands of Time was that the combat was less enjoyable than the platforming. And although Warrior Within did make some improvements, it still felt pretty standard and uneventful. The platforming has always been the main attraction in Prince of Persia, and fortunately, The Two Thrones knows it. In fact, this game made a real breakthrough by marrying the combat to the much stronger platforming. So here's how it works. You're encouraged to use your environment to platform around your enemies, sneak up on them, and initiate a sort of instant kill. Now this is absolutely ideal for the Prince of Persia because it makes what is pretty run-of-the-mill combat dependent upon what is pretty exceptional platform gameplay. It gives the game's weakest aspect a push from its strongest, and the result is a rewarding, stealth-reliant combat mechanic that really is an improvement over prior Prince of Persias. Of course, for all the improvements it makes, The Two Thrones still gets a little sand in the eyes. Interesting as its addition is from a narrative standpoint, the Dark Prince portions have a slightly adverse effect on the game's pacing. And when you're not pulling off those sneaky kills, the standard combat is still just mediocre. And yet with the Two Thrones, Ubisoft still brought the Sands of Time trilogy to a fittingly acrobatic close. Relative to his last adventure, the story's better, the gameplay's better, the music's better. It's proof that an old prince can learn new tricks in the excellent Prince of Persia: The Two Thrones.
Ah, I knew you had it in you.